Hello, Tungsten Miner here. Today I am starting a new series on Create, a relatively recent mod, only a couple of years old, but really super cool. Lots of new mechanics and machinery and rotating parts, and you can even make your own humongous rotating contraptions. That said, it's pretty complicated, so this will probably be a multi-part series. So today I'm going to get started with all of the resources and decorative blocks that it adds. Let's jump in. Okay, before jumping into resources, there's actually a much better place to start. So let's take a look at the Ponder screen. You notice if I hit pause and click on this little set of goggles here, I've got a Ponder index. And this thing is fantastic. It has every single block, well, not quite every single block, pretty much every single block, with great descriptions of their mechanics, all inside the mod itself. So if I click on cogwheels, for example, I get this great little demo of how cogwheels work with this whole animated sequence, different shafts and cogwheels and speedometers and all sorts of stuff in there. But looking at what we've got here, if I click this, it pauses the animation and I can hover over various things, and it shows you this is the thing this scene is about versus this just is an extra thing that happens to be here. I could also just press the Y key to get this. I can press E to get out. Many of these have multiple scenes, so I can press D to go on to the next scene, and it shows you some other interesting aspect of what's going on. If I want to go back, I can always do that too. If I want to repeat the scene from the beginning, I can just click here, and I can even kind of jump ahead or behind into various segments of the scene. If I want, I can click on this comfy reading thing over here, and you'll notice while text is being displayed, it slows down the animation, so you've got plenty of time to read what's going on here. Over on the side, I can go and see all of the other things in the same family, or I can always click back, and then finally this brings me back to the exit. So I can look at kinematic sources and see all these different things. I can go back and look at the appliances. So if at any point you want that in-game reference of exactly how something works, this thing is amazing. I almost decided not to create a mod spotlight, but there's actually some benefit to seeing things sequenced in order and talking about how the things come together. So I decided to go ahead anyway, but the Ponder Index, fantastic. All right, so you're already familiar, I imagine, with copper from vanilla Minecraft. Relatively recent introduction, but here you've got your normal ore blocks, you've got your raw copper and your copper ingots, and then your waxed copper block and your regular raw copper block. The two things that Create adds is a crushed copper ore, and we'll talk more about that crushing mechanic in a bit, as well as a copper nugget, which, you know, was just missing for some reason. As we look over here, we can see that Create also adds zinc, and it adds all of the same blocks. So you've got two kinds of zinc ore, you've got a block of zinc, a block of raw zinc, and your raw zinc, your crushed zinc ore, an ingot, and a nugget. And all of these things are added by Create. Zinc is found in the world in more or less the same places that copper is. So wherever you go digging for copper, you're likely to come across some zinc as well. All right, a bit of a machine here to talk about. This is a mixing machine, and one of the principles of Create is that there's no one magical block. And in fact, there's not really even a simple formulaic kind of multi-block that you use for making things. Instead, you kind of have to work with the lots of little pieces and get them all together. So let's explore this contraption, and then I'll make it clear in just a second why it is that we're talking about this right now. Okay, so starting at the bottom under the ground, I've got another one of those creative motors, that guy down there. This is now a brass encased shaft instead of a andesite encased shaft, but functions just like a shaft, except it's a solid block. Here we've got a couple of rotating shafts up to a cogwheel, which is turning a mechanical mixer. And this whole thing here is the mixer. And then underneath it, I've got a basin. This is a depot, and when I place a depot down next to a basin, kind of on a diagonal, it creates this port that comes out of the basin for outputs. This is just an ordinary hopper, and this guy is a blaze burner. basically a source of heat. And I'll get into this in more detail in a future video, but suffice to say for now, you can use a basin by itself, or if you have a recipe that requires heat, this is where you get heat from. In this hopper, I've got a copper ingot and a zinc ingot, and if I allow both of those to enter the basin, we can see it's mixing up the whole thing, and then out comes this brass ingot, and that's why we're talking about this now. Brass is one of those alloys that is introduced by Create and is actually a pretty important alloy. There's a whole bunch of different things that require it. So early on, I figured it would be good to talk about making a simple machine that produces some brass for you. Next up on our list of important alloys is actually probably the most important alloy of all. You make it by mixing some andesite and iron nuggets or zinc nuggets, either works. And what you wind up with is this andesite alloy. And we can see here from my JEI, this is used in a ton of different recipes. So you're going to want to make a whole lot of this stuff. Fortunately, andesite is a bit more common with Create because it adds another spawn underground. So you'll find a fair bit more of this stuff than you might in ordinary vanilla Minecraft. Next, let's talk about this rose quartz. You take regular quartz, surround it by redstone, and you get this rose quartz. The rose quartz itself really can't be used for much of anything, but when you combine it with sandpaper, so take your sandpaper and put it in your offhand, take the rose quartz, keep it in your other hand, and then hold down right-clicked, and you actually sand the rose quartz into polished rose quartz, which is itself used for electron tubes, which are themselves used for some of the more complicated kind of electronic-y sort of machines in the game. So you're probably going to wind up making a bunch of this stuff once you get further along into the game, but not straight away. So get rid of this, and moving on to the next thing is this crusher. So what we've got here is a crushing wheel, and then the crushing wheel here is being driven, well, in this case by a creative motor. I've got one of them turned negative, so it's rotating counterclockwise, and the other one has got a positive rotation, so it's rotating clockwise. And what you'll notice is that the two wheels need to be turning towards one another. This crusher won't work unless that's the case. And up here, I've got a whole bunch of things which can be crushed. So for example, if I take iron ore and I drop it into the crusher, I'm going to get back some crushed iron ore and a pretty good chance of getting some more crushed iron ore. So not quite ore doubling like you see in other mods, but it's actually better than nothing, right? You're also going to get this nugget of experience. And this is just an ordinary item, like anything else, that if you right-click with it, it will grant you the same experience you would have gotten if you had smelted the iron in the first place. Except these, of course, you can stuff them in a chest and hang on to them and keep your experience for later. And then there's also a very small chance you get some cobblestone back. But if you do this with redstone ore, the percentages are all different. You get 6 here, a 50% chance, not 75. Nugget of experience, get some cobblestone. With nether quartz ore, you get 2 and a 25% chance. So every ore is a little different. And you'll just have to look up and see, like, what is that you actually get for crushing things. There are some more complicated things, though, like diamond horse armor. You're definitely going to get a diamond. You're probably going to get some leather. You might get another couple of diamonds, and you might get some string. None of it's guaranteed. You can even do things like diorite stairs that will get crushed back into nether quartz. So pretty handy. Save your trip to the nether. Flowers can generally be crushed into their normal dyes, but with a chance of getting some extra dye. The last thing to talk about is this netherrack. If we take the netherrack, and in fact I will take the netherrack, and I'm just going to actually literally just chuck it into the machine if I can get quite close enough. There we go. And we can see the animation, and now we've got cinder flour. So this stuff is used pretty much for only 2 things. One is making this blaze cake, and the blaze cake can be used for your blaze burner. So remember the mixer we just looked at. This gets them into an even hotter stage, which is necessary for certain kinds of materials that you want to process. So you got to pour lava into the blaze cake base that you made with the cinder flour. The other thing you can do with this stuff is using a spout, you can pour in various kinds of potions and turn them into various kinds of powder. So night vision gets you glowstone, strength gets you redstone, and harming gets you gunpowder. So convenient way to turn some of that extra netherrack that you accumulate into something far more useful. Now let's talk about these decorative blocks. I have arbitrarily chosen calcite. This is a vanilla block added fairly recently. And if you run this through a stone cutting table, again, vanilla object, you're going to get all sorts of different options. And I've laid them all out here so you can get a good sense of what they look like. So there's this whole series of cut calcites, polished calcites, cut calcite bricks, and cut calcite small bricks. And each of them has stairs and slabs and walls. There's also the option of making this layered calcite, which joins up its textures horizontally, or a calcite pillar, which joins up its textures vertically. There's a whole bunch of stones, though, that Create adds. So azurine and crimsite and limestone, ochrum, scorchia, and viridium. All of these, with the exception of scorchia, are found in the overworld from about -30 to about 70, so pretty broadly available. And they're just different colors. There's actually kind of a special thing is if you put any of these ones with these little frames above them into a crusher, you get a very, very small chance of getting some crushed ore of one kind or another. So your azurine gets you zinc ore, crimsite gets you iron, can get gold from ochrum, and you can get copper from viridium. These two, scoria and scorchia, are also found in the nether, scorchia exclusively in the nether. And you can actually convert scoria into scorchia by mixing it with some black dye. Other than that, they're just fun decorative blocks that the mod adds. Next up, there's a whole bunch of different glass options. So if you take some glass, throw it in a stone cutter, you'll see all of these various options. Framed glass joins up its patterns across all axes. You've got a vertical variant and a horizontal variant, which join up vertically and horizontally. And then there's this tiled variant, which is just the same across. There's no joined textures at all. All of those have variants of just ordinary glass panes. And then finally, there's some decorative versions of these that have their own special recipes surrounding a wood frame and an iron frame. Last up for decorative blocks, there's two new variants of copper blocks. You've got your shingles and you've got your tiles. And if we look in here, the recipe for these guys is to take a copper sheet, which is itself produced using one of the machines. So copper ingots through a presser gets you a copper sheet. And then that can be put through a stone cutter in order to get these copper shingles. Same deal for getting your tiles. They're both just various options for copper sheets. They have waxed and unwaxed versions, and they also have the different oxidized states. So you can get a total of like 16 different variants between the waxed and unwaxed, all the different ones. Anyway, that's it for decorative blocks in Create. Next time, we'll start getting into some of the machines. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the button down below. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. Talk to you later.